Oh, 100%, 100%. I wanted to start this podcast off with NBA trade deadline. Now, I feel like a lot of Pistons fans have very strong opinions, and deservedly so. Uh, Best team we've had in like what 25 years.
Hmm.
Like it's just been such a the great thing to cover. I'm sure you've had like great stories you've written over the past couple of months, but they had put out that the Detroit Pistons aren't likely to make any big moves. And I feel like that's kind of been consistent with Trajan in any interview or any article that I've read. I mean, are you surprised by this, or do you think they should try to maybe explore, getting maybe a secondary option or exploring to make a big move, considering where the East is at right now?
Um, I'm a little surprised. I'm not gonna be, I'm not gonna lie. I can understand the logic. Being in a position where they've been number one in the East basically for the whole season. Played pretty good on both sides of the ball. They've maintained their identity and they've checked off a lot of the foundational things that they've been looking to do since Trajan and JB have gotten here. But we also know what the NBA is, and really just sports in general. Like, there's been a lot of comparisons between the Lions and their lack of moves or their lack of activity throughout the season in terms of roster movement, and I can see some of the correlation between it with the Pistons as well. While I'm not surprised that they're maybe not trying to go out and make a huge move or like a big swing to a player, I am kind of surprised if they. I would be great. It's not over yet because obviously the deadline's not here yet. But I would be pretty surprised if they don't end up doing anything because I don't feel like this is a team that is perfect. I do think they have done a good job playing regular season basketball up to this point. But what you've done to me, in my opinion, between the months of October through January of the new year is not the same as the postseason gets here. And I feel like while they've done a good job of winning and playing this ball for now, I think you still are seeing some cracks within this team.
Hmm.
I think yesterday was kind of an example. Like, granted, they do a good job of playing great team defense, even individually, but offensively, they still can leave a lot to be desired, especially when they're dealing with things like injuries, which has been a big occurrence all season. So I don't know. I personally feel like they could use a little bit of fine tuning. I don't think it would hurt them to maybe look for a shooter or two, or maybe another secondary creator. Again, I understand the logic just based on the success that they've had, but I still do worry to an extent on how good this is going to look once the playoffs get here and the game is tightened up in a half court setting where you can't play as open and loose as you've done up to this point in the regular season. So I personally have some of those questions, but who knows? Maybe we'll see that success continued in this direction. But I need to see it first before I'm a little bit more confident in just saying, okay, everything is fine.
Yeah, like I don't expect them to go out and trade like, two or their four like core pieces or anything like that. Like
Right.
I know we could probably talk about this player later. Like Michael Porter Jr. has been a really hot name among Pistons fans. Trey Murphy was until the Pelicans said, "Nah, let's run it back,"
Mm-hmm.
which okay, okay.
Crazy. All right, if you say so.
But I've always been of the opinion, kind of like you, like when it's the playoffs, it's not going to be a transition up and down game. It's going to be more half court settings.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw a lot of that against the Knicks where, they were trapping Cade and THJ had to step up. Dennis Schroeder had to have good games. And this team, obviously, roster construction is completely different from last season. Like Duncan Robinson is your only consistent perimeter high volume shooter.
Right.
So if they do anything at this trade deadline, I've been of the opinion of go look for another shooter out there. I feel like there's a lot of 3-point specialists out there that could be gettable. It just depends like what you want to give up in terms of draft capital or players. I think one player that I've mentioned with you is like I really like Dante DiVincenzo.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Grayson Allen. If you want to be cheaper, like Gary Trent Jr. from Milwaukee could be like a sneaky buy low option. Plus,
Mm-hmm.
there's a Duke connection there with Trajan, so you never know. But I'm not too surprised by like hearing that they don't want to make any big moves. I feel like if you were to make a big move, it's during the summer, it's during the draft. Because I feel like if you were to make a big move for a big like chip player, it's really hard to get them acclimated mid-season.
True.
Like I remember when they traded for Blake Griffin, they still made the playoffs. They missed the playoffs that year because it was really hard for him to get acclimated. They made the playoffs the very next season. But just to kind of get to my point, like I'm not too surprised, but if you do want to address more 3-point shooting, because I think it would help you out a ton in the playoffs and just in regular season games. Like the game against Chicago this week, like you saw it firsthand, like they need a 3-point shooter desperately. You can't rely on heroics every game.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is kind of clear cut. I think it was very obvious. Well, Trajan said it himself. He said we really want to, focus on the internal depth and see what this core can do and how far they can take you. So while I do believe there's a lot of buy-in and promise with this young core, I think they've shown the ability to play well together. I think they've shown the ability to, take some kind of steps in some areas of their game. There still is a lot to be desired offensively. I'm tired of seeing Cade getting double and triple teamed so much, and that's going to be a good focal point, towards the end of the season and into the postseason as well, depending on where they go. And honestly, you don't really know what is to tell with the future of this team or the NBA in general. Like it's the sports just as a whole. Like granted, again, the Lions Pistons thing it's a little more similar than people maybe want to give it credit to, but like that Michael Parsons trade like tipped the entire scale of the NFC North, unfortunately. And granted, I understand to an extent why Brad was maybe hesitant to making any kind of moves for the Lions. I think the Pistons have afforded the ability to maybe be a little bit more patient. Having Ivy come back from injury, not being able to see a lot of time with Duran, Asar, Cade, Ivy, Tobias, Stu, really seeing that whole core together working and, seeing what they look like. I think at this point, you're getting a little closer to some questions being answered. So again, while it may not take a splash for them to kind of be stable, like if they had, granted, Beasley's name is obviously so popular. If he was still on this rotation, this roster, I think things are completely different from how they change because the Pistons' success has not really required them to be this, all-star level, high-level offensive team because they play through their defense and they get that buy-in from everybody. It's been again, it's not like it's just Asar or Stu that's backpacking defensively. Everybody is giving you assistance on a defensive level, but offense is extremely important when, things tighten up towards the postseason as well. So I really do want to see them try to find a way to add some more shooting just so you can rid, all doubt. You want to go into these kind of situations as confident as possible. Like you don't want to be, searching for resolutions and just leaning on the inexperience of guys, in these, tough situations, especially when the East is as open as it is. And when you've shown the ability to beat and compete with everybody, like you want to be able to keep that assurance as high as possible. So yeah, again, I understand their logic of wanting to be patient, but it would be a little wise for me to kind of keep an eye open and make sure you're kind of fine tuning those margins of adding some shooting and some offensive lift for this team because they still could use it. I think the Pistons, I think, are still bottom half of a 3-point shooting team. And again, it's kind of inconsistent. There's some nights where it looks good where they can get out and run or they're hot, but when they're cold, like we saw yesterday against the Clippers, that says enough right there. You don't want to be playing that kind of inconsistent ball as the end of the season approaches.
I think through 38 games, it's mostly cold. Like they've had a couple of games recently where they made maybe 12 to 14 threes, but we know that's not a consistent thing they can do on a night-to-night basis.
Right.
You can't rely on living in the paint every game. I think you're starting to see teams just kind of like, okay, Asar, we know that you like to, get to the basket. We're just going to stay back here because we know you're not a perimeter threat. We know you're not going to shoot. You're going to pass it, or you're going to try to dribble at the top of the key and just try to get to the lane. I think teams are going to start game planning for how the Pistons like to play in the paint. And you can't rely on free throws either, even though this is a team that is in the top half of the league of getting to the free throw line. Once the playoffs start, I mean, it's going to be margins for errors will be so little and so small. That's why perimeter shooting matters so much throughout an NBA playoff series and in a regular season for that matter. But I mean, it'll be really interesting to see what Trajan's approach is. Obviously, I don't think he's just not going to do anything. I think the word that I keep seeing is opportunistic, and it made me think of the Dennis Schroeder trade. Shout out to Dennis, by the way.
Yeah. That's my dog. Shout out. I should have had a Dennis jersey on right now.
It's Squabble up.
Squabble up, Dennis. Squabble up.
But,
I'm with you though, man. Yeah, because you see, like, you talk about free throws. I think the Pistons are also like, I think they're the second to worst team in the league in free throw shooting as well. And it's no more important time to be able to shoot free throws than in the postseason as well. Like, if you're a team that wants to prioritize paint scoring and being physical, you're going to have to be able to shoot free throws. And you've had a lot of guys, Cade Cunningham included, there's a lot of guys that have shown that they've missed late game free throws, and that's not going to be able to fly when you're trying to get to, new heights and new levels. And especially now, like, again, if the Pistons get into the postseason, based on what we've seen now, it would be cool for them to win a first round, playoff, matchup, whoever they play, whether it's Miami, Cleveland, Atlanta, whoever it will be. You win, that's cool. You have a chance to still do more. It is good to overachieve when that opportunity is there. There's nothing wrong with kicking the door open like Indiana did, or when Atlanta did when they had Trae Young and they were able to beat the Sixers. Like, it helps to expedite your processing. And again, it does seem to an extent, again, I could be wrong as they keep progressing, but it does seem like they just need a little bit more to make sure they're leaving little doubt when getting ready for these postseason matchups.